Survival rule number 3. You're not here to love anybody. You're here to promote a movie. That's it. Period. Say you're here and you get word that your mother died. Hit by a bus or something. You go downstairs, you shed a tear, and you say, "It's a shame. She would have loved this movie." Hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 63 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about tectonic plates. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you for joining me today. And oh my goodness, has it ever been an absolutely crazy week here in my house. A few crazy things have happened. We'll start with some of the sad thing that happened is my basement flooded earlier this week, so that was something we had to deal with. Luckily though, it was just a minor flood, so we didn't really suffer any damages, and we've got like a dehumidifier running down there, so thankfully this is not as bad as it definitely could have been, but it's just been raining so much lately that it ended up flooding our basement a little bit, so I'm sad about that. One other thing that happened is I mentioned last week I got my 3D printer in, and I have been running that pretty much nonstop since getting it, and it's been so much fun to play with. It's a steep learning curve, though, teaching myself how to 3D print. So that's something that's been taking up a lot of my time these days, too. But then, the big one. The big thing that happened in my life this week is my sister finally had her baby. Little baby Ivy was born this week, and due to COVID, we were not able to really go visit at the hospital. But lucky for us, she lives right across the street from me. So when they got home earlier today, we were able to go across, and we were able to look at her in her little car seat, and we were able to see her from a distance, and she was just so cute and so sweet. So it was wonderful to welcome her into the world. So to my sister and her husband, congratulations on your little baby. I don't think you guys listen to this show, but it's worth mentioning anyway. So aside from those little updates there on what's going on with me, let's talk about today's topic. So last week, my wife and I sat down and we rewatched the movie Kong Skull Island. And as I was sitting and I was watching it, this movie's not bad. This was only my second time watching it. I saw it when it came out in theaters and then watched it just like a few days ago. And I was sitting there, I was watching, I was like, you know what? This is not awful as far as world building and as far as like an action movie goes and setting up the movie universe in general. And that got me to thinking about movie universes as a whole and just like what works, what doesn't work. Obviously, the big one is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's by far the most successful, the most critically acclaimed, made the most money, has the most movies in it. And it's absolutely crazy that something like that exists. And it's even crazier to think that other studios have tried to replicate the formula and have failed. So I've got a few other movie universes here today that I want to talk about. And in comparison to Marvel, where these universes kind of failed or dropped the ball, or like what happened in order to not help progress everything forward. So that's what today is going to be. It's just a bit of movie universe analysis here. We're going to take a look at what's going on. First one I want to talk about is the Dark Universe. Now, this one was made by Universal Studios, and they have been trying for a long time to get a movie monster universe set up where like movie monsters cross paths and overlap, and then they have like an Avengers style monster movie. Now, the attempts that they've had here haven't been spectacular. So let's talk about them really quick. In 2014, they released a movie called Dracula Untold. Now, I actually haven't seen it because I thought it looked not very good, and then the reviews confirmed my suspicions. So I actually haven't seen it, so I don't have anything to speak on that movie. But from what I understand, that was supposed to be like the starting point of their dark universe, or their movie monster universe, whatever it was called at the time. But then after the reception of that film, they kind of swept it under the rug and then started again. And then in 2017, they released The Mummy with Tom Cruise. Now, this Mummy with Tom Cruise, I was actually very excited about. I am a big fan of the original Mummy with Boris Karloff, like all the way back from the 1930s. If you haven't seen that, you should probably check it out. It's a lot of fun. So I was wanting to know where they were going with this. Like, obviously I'd seen the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies too, and just wanted to check out what is going on here in these movies. So we sat down and we watched The Mummy, and it was not very good. And I'm not really here to do a complete review as to why it's not good, but why it doesn't work as part of a movie universe. So basically what they're doing here is they're putting the cart before the horse, basically, and they're so focused on setting up future movies and setting up the universe as a whole and doing all of this world building that they don't take the time to really focus on the characters and the story that they're telling right now. So Tom Cruise's character, I do not remember his name, and then the guy who plays Nick from New Girl, he's in this movie too. I don't know the characters' names. And then there's the mummy character, and she comes back to life, but then Tom Cruise's character gets mummy powers somehow, and then they meet up with Russell Crowe, who plays Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it's just kind of a mess because they are so focused, and they have some kind of organization that's supposed to be like their version of S.H.I.E.L.D. in these movies, and they spend so much time like dropping Easter eggs and getting all of this stuff set up that by the end of the movie, I don't care about those things because I don't really care about the characters and I don't care about the events. And I think that that's the big lesson that movie universes have to learn from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just take a look at the first few movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You had Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America the First Avenger. And let's look at the ones that are the best. So Iron Man and Captain America the First Avenger. Those movies are very character focused. Like, we know who these people are. We know what journey they're going on. They have a complete story arc. They are strong, independent films, and they're not preoccupied with setting up future movies. If you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what are the weakest movies? When you talk to most people, they'll say like Iron Man 2, Thor the Dark World, or Avengers Age of Ultron are probably the weakest of the series. You can also throw Captain Marvel in there, but I'm done ragging on Captain Marvel for the next little while. So let's just talk about those three. Those three movies are the weakest, and those are the ones that are most guilty of doing future setup. In Iron Man 2, you have a lot of Easter eggs tossed in. You have a lot of stuff with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. All stuff that seems to be just pushing the world forward and not really developing the characters. In Thor the Dark World, you have the exact same thing going on. Also, I just think that's a weak film. But it introduces one of the Infinity Stones, and it does a lot of setting up for things in the future, and really just, it's not that good. But then going to Avengers Age of Ultron, Thor spends a lot of that movie when he goes into his hot tub time machine and he sees visions of the future, like it's setting up Civil War. This movie is setting up Infinity War. It sets up Endgame. Age of Ultron does a lot of work to set up other things in the future. And so as a whole, because of those aspects, we don't get to focus on the story at hand. And so it suffers because of that. And that's exactly what's going on in the Dark Universe here. And last I heard, they're not making any more of these movies. But they were all lock, stock, and barrel. They were going forward. They had announced like Javier Bardem and Johnny Depp and all of these different really famous actors were going to be portraying all of these different favorite movie monsters. I think Angelina Jolie was supposed to be the Bride of Frankenstein. Johnny Depp was supposed to be the Invisible Man. Can't remember who Javier Bardem was supposed to be. The Wolfman, maybe? Can't remember. But now it's dead in the water because nobody went to go watch these movies because nobody cared. Because the studio looked at what Marvel had done and say, hey, we want that kind of money, but didn't look at what exactly they had done for Marvel to earn that money. Iron Man and Thor and Captain America the First Avenger, those movies did not make lots of money, but they were really good movies and they did the groundwork. But what things like the Dark Universe and others do is they look at the Avengers and they're like, the Avengers made over $100 million in its opening weekend. Like, let's do that. We want that, but they're not doing the same, they're not laying the same groundwork that Marvel did with its characters in order to get that kind of a response at the box office. So between Dracula Untold and The Mummy, we've got a dead franchise before it even really began. And then we had The Invisible Man, which came out just earlier this year in 2020. It's one of the only movies to be released in 2020 because, well, we just don't have movies this year, I guess. And The Invisible Man, I haven't seen it. It sounds like it's good, but and it maybe fits into this dark universe, it maybe doesn't. I haven't looked into it too deeply, but it maybe fits in there. But I don't think Johnny Depp's in this movie. So if it's part of the dark universe, they have definitely switched directions and are doing things like from a different angle, and they're trying to really go back to basics and make sure that their movie is strong in order to move their entire franchise forward. And that's what all of these universes should be doing. As far as the dark universe goes, though, I don't know if I have much else to say because there just isn't that much to it. There's not enough movies to really talk about. So I'm going to move on to the next movie universe that I have. Now, I do not know what the name of this movie universe is. I did try to look it up. So this is the Godzilla King Kong movie universe. For simpler purposes, I'm going to call it Monarch, the Monarch universe, because that's the name of the society that looks up all of the different creatures of the world. So in the Monarch universe, we've got 3 movies so far, and I think that this movie universe is actually doing the best so far at like creating a cohesive world and making everything kind of make sense. So in 2014, you had Godzilla, 2017, Kong Skull Island, and just last year, Godzilla King of Monsters. Or is it King of the Monsters? One of the two, not 100% sure. I can't remember. I do have a movie poster for it, but because I don't really like that movie, I don't ever look at it. I wonder if I should do a episode about my movie poster collection in the future, because I have so many of them. Unfortunately, I only have one frame though, so what I do is once a month I will switch out movie poster and like cycle them through so I have the time to look at them. Otherwise, they just go into storage until it's time for them to be on display. Right now, for June, I've got the movie Game Night is hung up, so that's a good movie. Not talking about it though. I'm gonna go back to the Monarch universe here. So Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, and Godzilla King of the Monsters. Now, that first Godzilla movie from 2014, directed by Gareth Edwards and starring Bryan Cranston, Elizabeth Olsen, and the guy who plays Quicksilver, Aaron Taylor Johnson. That movie's good. I quite enjoy that movie. I know a lot of people were disappointed that whenever you're about to see Godzilla and the monsters fight, it cuts away and really hides the monsters until the end of the movie. I really like that aspect of the filmmaking. I think that it works really well as far as big reveals go for the end of the film. But there's not much as far as characters go. The only thing that's tying these movies together so far is Monarch. We don't have characters, at least human characters, crossing over. So Godzilla had Bryan Cranston, but his character passed away. Then we have Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson. I don't think their characters are supposed to be appearing, especially because they're not in Godzilla King of the Monsters. So I think their characters are out. In Kong Skull Island, that movie takes place in the 70s, so in modern day, that's gonna be out. We won't have those characters around. And then in Godzilla King of the Monsters, that was a bad movie, and the characters had no personalities. They were very one-note characters. I do believe that Millie Bobby Brown's character is supposed to appear in Godzilla vs. King Kong, which was supposed to come out this November. I don't know if the release date has been moved or not. I would still like to see it. But overall, across these films, we don't have characters popping up again. We don't have character development. We don't have characters that we care about. We have Godzilla and we have King Kong, and that's all that it has going for it. And then this secret organization of Monarch who's kind of tying everything together, and it's like the thread that's pulling these movies into one piece. So unlike with the Dark Universe, I don't think that these movies are too preoccupied with building a world as opposed to making a good movie, because Godzilla's a great movie and Kong Skull Island is fine. Like, I think it's good, it's nothing great. And then Godzilla King of the Monsters was bad. So 2 out of 3 is not bad. But I don't feel like I'm having this world building being bashed over the head while I'm watching these films. It's a good movie within itself, but I think the problem is that we don't have characters that are carrying through. Like, if in Godzilla there was a character from Monarch who was like the main person in charge, who then showed up in maybe Kong Skull Island, or maybe showed up in Godzilla King of the Monsters, but that's not the thing. Like, we don't have characters that we're familiar with or care about crossing over between these films, and I think that's what's making this universe a little bit weaker. I don't think Godzilla King of the Monsters made tons of money. I don't think Kong Skull Island made a ton of money either. I am, however, still looking forward to future films, and that's a testament to this movie universe as opposed to others. Is that Dark Universe? I don't care. The Invisible Man came out, it's maybe connected, it's maybe not. I didn't care, so I didn't go watch it. In the Monarch universe, I've got Godzilla, King Kong, and Godzilla vs. King Kong is supposed to be coming out. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see it. So I'm still semi-invested in this universe here. So they're doing something right, but not 100% right. They learned the lesson from Marvel that don't be too preoccupied on the world building, but they didn't learn the lesson of we gotta have some characters holding this whole thing together. Otherwise, it's just gonna fall apart. Those first three movies, you've got Nick Fury popping up. He's in Iron Man. He's in Iron Man 2. Agent Coulson is in Thor and in Iron Man 2. And then Nick Fury is at the end of Captain America the First Avenger. Like, they're all knitted together with these familiar faces that we're seeing, as opposed to the Monarch logo, which kind of just looks like a butterfly. I think it's a fine logo. I think it's decent, but it's not enough for me to be like, oh, like, this is all connected and get really excited about it. As opposed to at the end of Captain America the First Avenger, when Nick Fury shows up and he is talking to Cap and they're in Times Square, and I'm like, okay, like, Cap is in this now, like, we are getting together and it's time, like, Avengers is coming, let's get excited for the Avengers. That's not how I'm feeling towards Monarch, and it's definitely not how I'm feeling towards the Dark Universe. That's about all I have to say to that one as well. I've got one more movie universe left. This is the big one. It's got the most movies in it, other than Marvel, of course. Let's just get to it. This is the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe, or Worlds of DC. I've also heard it referred to as. Okay, let's just talk about it here. How many movies? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 movies so far. They're maybe connected, they're maybe not. I have no idea anymore. I don't think DC knows anymore. I don't think DC cares anymore. Let's just talk about it here. So we've got Man of Steel from 2013, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice in 2016. In 2016, we also had Suicide Squad. 2017 brought us both Wonder Woman and Justice League. 2018 was Aquaman, and 2019 was Shazam. Shazam! That's how I'm supposed to say it. It has the exclamation point. I even wrote the exclamation point down in my notes, so I gotta say it with that. But this movie series exhausts me. I'm tired of being hopeful that these movies are gonna be good and that I'm gonna really enjoy what I'm seeing on screen. So let's talk about it. Man of Steel. Man of Steel is not a bad movie. I think Man of Steel is a perfectly fine movie. I don't think it's amazing. It's a little dour. And then we have Batman v Superman. Now, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice is a pile of flaming garbage, and I think it's just really bad. And I have seen the Ultimate Edition, and that movie is flaming garbage, except they put the fire out. So it's still bad, but not as bad. Batman v Superman really suffers from putting the cart before the horse as far as universe building goes. It's trying to play catch up more than anything else in these movie universes. So DC is looking at Marvel and saying, hey, it's 2016, Marvel is on like movie 15, we got to do a catch up, we got to do all the work of 10 movies in one. And they've horribly failed. There's nothing going on in this movie that really cements anything in place. Like, this movie doesn't know what it wants to be or what it's supposed to be. It has no focus. Is it about Batman fighting Superman? Is it about Lex Luthor hating Superman? Is it about Lois Lane investigating guys in Africa? Is it about the senator lady? Is it about Wonder Woman doing weird stuff? Is it about forming the Justice League? Like, what is going on in this movie? What is the point of this film? There's no clear focus. And to compare it to a Marvel movie that came out in the same year as Captain America Civil War, I was having a discussion with my wife's cousin just earlier this week about Captain America Civil War, and he said, like, oh, you can basically call Captain America Civil War Avengers 2.5, which is an argument I've heard before, and there are clear arguments for that. But if you look at the movie, there's a clear focus. Like, it is, at its heart, it's a Captain America movie. There's a lot going on in Civil War. They introduced Black Panther and Spider-Man in that movie. But that movie takes the time to give us moments with Captain America, especially having Peggy's funeral as a part of that movie. I think that just cements the fact that this movie is about Captain America. Now, going back to Batman v Superman, Superman's barely in this movie. Batman is in it a lot, but there's nothing really there that just seals the deal and makes it like a really impressive film. There are good aspects to this movie, but as a film as a whole, I have a lot of problems with it. When Batman goes into the warehouse and beats up all the guys in the warehouse, I think that's a really fun action sequence. It's really good. It's hard hitting, a lot of fun. But whenever Lex Luthor's on screen, it's really goofy. When Doomsday shows up, I don't know what Wonder Woman is doing in this film. And when Batman sends the email to Wonder Woman and she watches the footage of all the other members of the Justice League, like what is that supposed to be? This is really poor. Like, it's not even like just focused on world building. It's just really bad world building. But as bad as Batman v Superman is, it is not worse than the other movie that came out in 2016, and that is Suicide Squad, because I hate every moment of that film. It is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, especially, like, I'm not about to go on a Suicide Squad rage tangent here. Let's look at it subjectively and see why this movie doesn't work. It doesn't work as part of a universe or anything like that. Now, this movie was supposed to be the DCEU's Guardians of the Galaxy, like this quirky, fun team that goes on an adventure and they are their own brand and they do their own thing and they're connected, but from a distance, and then they get brought in later. That's kind of what this was supposed to be. Let's look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is an out there movie about a talking tree. They got a raccoon. There's Howard the Duck at the end. Like, this movie is bonkers. It's crazy, and it has a ridiculous soundtrack. And so DC watched Guardians of the Galaxy, and they said, we need to do something like that for our universe. Let's do Suicide Squad. And, oh boy. Okay. A movie like Guardians of the Galaxy, it was like, okay, let's do some kind. It was like the 9th or 10th movie of the MCU. So by the time it came out, you had trust in Marvel. You had faith in them that they are making good movies that you're going to enjoy. Suicide Squad is the DCEU's 3rd film. And after Man of Steel was just okay and Batman v Superman had a very poor reception, they went back and made a bunch of changes to Suicide Squad to try and make it more appealing to audiences, and it just didn't work. I have never seen a movie so horribly edited than I have Suicide Squad. I've never seen character development done so horribly, and in the sense that there just isn't any. They saw Guardians of the Galaxy and said, like, hey, we need to have a fun soundtrack, even to the point that one of the same songs from Guardians of the Galaxy is in Suicide Squad. Like, how lazy is that? It's so lazy. So they're focused on building a universe. They're not focused on characters. They're just focused on making money and trying to do it in the fast and most efficient way possible, and it's not working. Iron Man came out in 2008. Avengers came out in 2012. That's 5 years of making movies that they put in, laying the groundwork before they could reap the benefits of the Avengers, of making over $1 billion at the box office. Okay? That's not how, you can't just release a movie and expect it to make over $1 billion. Unless you're James Cameron, that doesn't happen. You gotta put in the work. You have to make it appealing to audiences. You gotta have good characters. You gotta have a good story. It has to make sense on some coherent level. Suicide Squad makes no sense. And granted, I've only seen the movie once. I have no intention of watching it ever again because it's horrible. It does not deserve, it's not worth my time to watch it a second time. It's not worth anyone's time to even watch it a first time. I've heard people say, like, oh, I've never seen Suicide Squad. I hear it's good. I say, I don't know who you're talking to, but they're wrong. So, like, now you can like Suicide Squad. That's fine. But to say that it's a good movie, I have a lot of problems with because it's just not. As an example, I love the movie The Flintstones. I get a real kick out of watching that movie, but not for a second am I going to try and convince anyone that it is a good movie. It is horrible. It's very bad, but I love it. So it's okay. It's okay if you like it, but I've got problems if you're trying to fool yourself that it's any good. Let's stop talking about that now. Wonder Woman was fine. It kind of fell apart in the end there. I like how it really distanced itself from everything else by taking place in World War I. Unfortunately, its villains kind of feel like they're in a different movie because Wonder Woman takes herself seriously, and these are kind of mustache-twirling villains. And then when you get to the end, the movie kind of falls apart because it promises to be something different throughout the entirety of the film, and then its climax is just the same as every other DC climax. But the movie is fine. It's good. I have a movie poster for it. I have the Blu-ray. It's fine. But it's not amazing. But then there's the disappointment that is Justice League. So we had setups kind of for this movie. In Batman v Superman, there was weird time travel stuff where the Flash showed up out of nowhere saying that Lois is the key, and this movie was supposed to resolve all that. This movie got butchered by the studio, and then there was stuff with Zack Snyder that he had to step away, and Joss Whedon came in and they reshot 70% of the movie, and the movie that we got, it was really bad. Now, we're not going to talk about the Snyder Cut right now. I have got a whole lot of thoughts about the Snyder Cut. It could very well merit its own episode. Maybe I'll wait till it comes out and I actually see it, but I have no faith that the Snyder Cut will be any good. But going back to Justice League, it just, for one reason, everything was red. Why was it so red? I don't know. And it felt so incomplete and so butchered that how could they think that this was going to make money and that this was going to be recepted well? I would have rather they completely cancel the film, take an additional year to rework it and reshoot it, and release something that was higher quality than what we got. And Justice League's opening weekend made very little money. It made something like $94 million in its opening weekend, because at this point, 5 movies in, audiences have started to give up. They realized that they're not being given quality films, they're not given a cohesive universe, they're not given characters that they care about, and so why go to the box office? Why give your money to a studio that's not doing what another studio is doing perfectly well? So $94 million opening weekend, that is abysmal. It's horrible, horrible, horrible. As a comparison, the first Avengers movie made something like $207 million in its opening weekend. $207 million, as opposed to 94. That's more than double. As another comparison, Guardians of the Galaxy in its opening weekend made somewhere in the realm of $91 million. And Guardians of the Galaxy, like I said, it was out there, and it was a risk for Marvel, but they had done the groundwork, and they had gained the trust of the audience, that they came out in droves and they watched Guardians of the Galaxy, and it made a lot of money. But from Justice League's perspective, this movie cost over $300 million because of all the reshoots and everything, and then nobody came to watch it. I'm pretty sure Justice League lost money. We'll see what happens with the Snyder Cut if that makes them money. It's going to cost something like $30 million for them to do the changes that they need to make in order to make it broadcastable on HBO Max or whatever. But Justice League was kind of the last nail in the coffin for the DCEU. And you know what? DC put themselves in that coffin and then nailed it shut themselves, just because they made the wrong decisions on what to do. After Justice League came out, we had Aquaman. Now, Aquaman is interesting because it pretends Justice League didn't happen. At least I think it does. So everything that came out after Justice League, which is Aquaman and Shazam so far, are seeming to like distance themselves and say like, hey, we're in our own universe, even though we're the same actors and there's crossover, but we're our own thing. So when Aquaman meets Mera, they pretend like it's the first time they've ever met, even though they have scenes together in Justice League. And it definitely takes place after Justice League. So it's just frustrating at this point because now they're just making movies, but they're not giving the audience any kind of information. Like, what is this? Is this part of a universe? Is it different? Joker at least was very clearly its own thing. Once again, I didn't like Joker, but at least it was very clearly set apart. Jason Momoa appears in Batman v Superman and Justice League, and then in Aquaman, so you can't tell me that it's completely separate and different when it's the same actor, because that's going to cause confusion to the audience. And then people are going to think it's connected, but then the plot and the things that the characters are saying in the movie don't line up with other things that have happened. That's sloppy canon. It's just all over the place at this point. And then Shazam was fun. I thought it was fine. Also kind of falls apart in the third act. The weird blob monsters I'm not as into because they all kind of look the same. They're supposed to have different personalities, but I don't really see it. But overall, the movie is fun. And looking back at this entire universe, like, what is going on? What is going on? What are they trying to do? Obviously, they're trying to have a movie universe, and it's just not working. There's something wrong. And I've already said what's wrong. They're focused on world building over individual films, and they're not focused on character as much as they should. There's like not much of character arcs in these movies. There's not much of quality world building. There's not much of quality filmmaking going on in these movies. And credit where credit is due, Zack Snyder knows how to make very good looking films, but from a story perspective, Zack Snyder doesn't really know what he's doing. Look at Watchmen. Watchmen works as a movie because it is almost a play-by-play adaptation of the graphic novel. It's a very close translation. There are a few little changes and some things that were taken out, but overall, panel by panel, it's very close to the original story, and that's why that movie works, because Zack Snyder's not making any story decisions. Batman v Superman is loosely based off of The Dark Knight Returns and a couple of other things thrown in together, Superman Doomsday, and because Zack Snyder is given free reign and like making up the story and whatnot, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And that's the problem with these movie universes, is that you need someone who understands the story aspect, you need someone who understands the financial aspect of filmmaking, you need someone who understands the content that you're putting forward, the ultimate vision of what you're wanting to accomplish with these movies, and have that person steer the ship. And I haven't mentioned his name up until this point, but they need a Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige is the head of Marvel Studios, and he is a lover of comic books. He's also a really smart producer. He is one of the smartest people in Hollywood right now, and there's a reason that the movies that he makes make so much money, because he knows who the characters are, he knows where the story is going, he knows everything. When you have a movie that's made by committee, that's when you end up with something like Justice League. It falls apart, it doesn't work. You need someone in charge of the creative and pushing forward and standing up for the creative vision of what's going to happen. Otherwise, everything is just going to fall apart, and you're going to have a bad movie universe, and that's why that the Dark Universe and the Monarch Universe and the DCEU are all not on the level that Marvel is. They just are not on that level because they're not putting in the same amount of effort that Kevin Feige is putting in and his team at Marvel. They're not looking at directors like James Gunn or the Russo brothers or someone who has clear vision on what to do. Ryan Coogler directing Black Panther is absolutely brilliant. That's a brilliant decision. James Gunn directing Guardians of the Galaxy is a brilliant decision. Zack Snyder is not that good of a decision. I don't know who directed any of these other movies except for Gareth Edwards directing Godzilla. And that was kind of like his big break movie, and that's why I know his name. But you need directors like this. Scott Derrickson directed Doctor Strange, and he comes from a horror background, so he was a perfect fit to go in there. It just makes sense. From a creative standpoint, from a story standpoint, from a world building standpoint, this is why these are not working. And if other studios are wanting to make movie universes and wanting to follow the Marvel model, I think Marvel's gotten a little too big right now. Now with like the Disney Plus shows and all of that, it's gonna be a lot to really focus on and keep up with and make sure I'm seeing all of the things in the right order so that other things don't get ruined for me. I think that's going to be a lot of work on the side of the viewer, but that's the direction they're going now. We'll see how it works. Obviously Black Widow was supposed to already be released and it hasn't yet, but we'll see what happens. Overall though, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the original. It did it the best. And like, you could talk about James Bond or Friday the 13th and all these other movie series that have lots and lots of movies to them, but Marvel has separate franchises tied together, and that's the difference of a movie universe and just a series. James Bond just has a lot of movies about James Bond, but Marvel has Iron Man movies, Captain America movies, Thor movies. Dark Universe had Dracula and The Mummy. DCU had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. Separate franchises that are tied together is a movie universe, as opposed to Jason X is the 10th movie. That's not a movie universe, that's a series. And it's a very fine distinction. But anyway, that's going to be pretty much it for this discussion here on movie universes. What is your favorite movie universe? Is it one of these here? Is it one that I didn't even mention? Please feel free to let me know. You can reach out to me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at PottleNathan, and you can follow the show on Instagram at Movies Are Awesome Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to subscribe to the show. You can do so on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other places. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It means a lot to me that you stuck around to listen to me rant a little bit or talk about where studios can do better. So thank you for that, and if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.